Welcome to episode 9 of the Podcast. I'm Jason Priebe.
I'm Austin Boniface.
And I'm Mike Challe.
And we are in the heart of the Olympics. Go Team USA.
Took it right out of my mouth.
There you go.
You been watching any of the Olympics lately, Mike?
Not too much. Far more concentrated on Jordan Love's contract that he just signed. Highest paid player in the NFL.
Most overpaid player in the NFL? Yeah.
It's a copycat league. We'll find out. Back to the Olympics, though. I don't want to steal your guys' thunder. You're even wearing the team apparel.
Team USA.
Yeah. Yep.
Had to get it.
A true patriot.
Paid $5 extra so I could get it for opening ceremony.
In all seriousness, though, do you watch a lot of the Olympics?
I like watching them.
Okay.
Like I'm constantly flipping though. I really like the new way of being able to watch sports, especially Olympics, where they can have them on like 6 channels at once. You can have 4 channels going all at the same time. Just constant action.
Yeah.
It's great.
So what's more American, Jason watching all the Olympics or Mike only paying attention to American football?
I don't know.
I think Jason's more of a patriot.
I think so, too.
I think I win there.
I'll give him that one.
Most interesting sports that I've watched. Not unusual, but like I always just love ping pong. I mean, it's just crazy watching them just like back and forth. The other one that's kind of fun on similar line is badminton. Badminton's a little bit different because they can all out hit it, but like it's the birdie, so it only goes fast for so long and then it like slows down. Archery always just kills me too because it's like this game of like who can't get a 10. It's like every shot is a 10. I think the final for the women's, I was watching that one and they all got 10s. It was just a shoot off.
It's a who misses first.
Yeah. And in the sudden death, they each get, there's 3 people on a team. They each get 1 arrow in the sudden death. And the first person got 7. It's like guaranteed to lose.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Just completely messed up. I think it was Netherlands lost to South Korea, women's. I don't know. What have you watched?
It just started, so I will watch Team USA basketball, of course. It's their best team they've fielded, and all the big boys are playing. So it's the best team they've fielded in a long time.
Is there anyone from the Bucks on the team?
Giannis is representing Team Greece. So no, there is no.
You're not cheering for Team Greece?
No, I am. They lost to Canada yesterday.
Oof.
So Canada is a very good team. Greece has 1 player. His name's Giannis.
It's like Serbia. Team USA played them yesterday.
Yeah, they have Joker.
Yep, they sure do. He couldn't compete though.
I think I like the Winter Olympics more than the Summer Olympics.
You guys are hockey fans, so
Yeah.
that's not a surprise.
The figure skating is cool.
The speed skating.
The speed
skating,
skating is
yeah.
cool.
It's crazy how fast they go.
You guys excited for Focus? Apollo Ono as one of the speakers?
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Let's see what he
That would
has
be
to
really
say.
good.
Yeah, I haven't watched much. I watched a little bit of swimming last night and some gymnastics, but I'm more of a mainstream sports kind of guy at the Olympics. And then, of course, I watch my wrestling, but that's about it. Watched a little bit of women's judo. I do not understand how that works at all. I was confused.
You know, one sport that I think looks awesome in the Olympics is handball.
Yeah.
And I want to know why, like, Josh Allen, Lamar.
You know, that's
we could field such a great handball team.
that's one of the only Olympic sports the United States have never won a medal in.
Yeah, like, we got to change that.
Yeah.
Mahomes.
I feel like it wouldn't change much. Like it wouldn't take much. Like just let's just get some of these guys together and let's get the NFL to release their
Olympics.
so that they can be okay if they get injured, and let's go out there and let's win ourselves one of the first medals in that sport.
True patriot.
Yeah. I mean, come on. We got to do it.
Another interesting thing I saw on social media over the weekend is a couple similarities to the 1984 Olympics, because Soviet Union pulled out of the 84 Olympics, just like Russia pulled out of this year's Olympics. We have this chart of medal counts. So if you look at the number of medals in the 1980 Olympics, it was like all Soviet Union, and then 1984, all U.S. Funny little tidbit about that is McDonald's did a promotion where for every single gold medal, they would give out a free Big Mac for anybody who went and redeemed it. And they made that promotion before Soviet Union pulled out of the Olympics. A little bit of bad timing there, watching all these medals come in for the United States.
I'd say it worked out all right for them.
Yeah. It's interesting to look at this chart, though, and just look at like the rise of China and, as their population wave came through. United States pretty steady, number one throughout.
Yeah, we'll see what it looks like this year.
I mean, at some point,
Jason will have to keep us updated on it.
Yeah.
I'll keep you updated. Medal count, I think the USA is winning, just not in the gold medal count. That's China right now.
Well, that's because they got sports that have medaled already, or all the sports you're watching, like the table tennis and the badminton, the archery, the shooting.
At some point, China should take up a larger share of the medal count. They have
By population,
3 times the population. At
Actually
some point.
I saw another chart on this. We can bring it up, but the number one country for Olympic medals by population. You guys know what it is?
In the summer games or total?
Total.
By population.
Yeah, per capita.
Probably like Finland or
No,
what is it?
it's Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Yeah.
The bobsled team.
Yeah, and Jamaica's number one if you do it proportionate by GDP as well. But they only have 4 gold medals, so there's a little bit of a denominator effect there.
Well, everyone knows them.
Yeah.
That's true.
Moving on, other timely topics, a little bit market related here. How about this rotation we've seen in the last week and a half, 2 weeks?
Last couple of weeks, it's been big and quick.
Yeah. One of my favorite market quotes by Howard Marks is, sometimes things take longer than you think they should, but when they happen faster than you ever thought they could. And that's kind of what we're seeing. And, geez, you blink your eye and large cap tech's not the best performing sector anymore. It hasn't just been the top 7 names the last 2 weeks. We've really seen a broadening out. I think there was one day where the NASDAQ was down like 2-3% and small caps were up like 3%.
It was the biggest variation between the two ever on a single trading day.
It just brings the point on why we own what we own in portfolios and why, for somebody approaching retirement and approaching distributions from their portfolio, owning just the S&P 500 is not always the best thing. And, that's what you might hear on the internet and see, why are you paying anybody to manage your portfolio? Just buy the S&P 500. Well, just because it's been the best performing index in the last 10 years doesn't mean it's going to be for the next 10. I think staying diversified is really important.
For sure. I mean, through the first half of the year, the beginning of July, you look at it and you're like, why do I own anything other than, the S&P 500 or even if you want to get more particular, the growth side of it. It was absolutely running. And I know we've had conversations with clients. Well, what about this fund? Why do we have that? It's doing terrible. It's a large cap fund. Why do we have it in there? It's lagging behind. And it's the value side of large cap. And now in the last 2 weeks, it's the best thing to own. In fact, what's the top performing sector of the year now?
The top performing sector year to date is not tech, like everyone will tell you. It's utility, not utilities, it's financials. As of today, utilities are second. I believe staples are third. These boring value sectors, these companies that you don't see in the news, you don't have the CEOs speaking all over the place. It's boring, stable companies.
Just to put some numbers behind it, since July 5th, the numbers are the S&P 500 down, or through last Friday, so the 26th, S&P 500 down 1.7, the Russell 2000 up 10.8.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and small caps were just hated on, right? No one wanted to buy small caps, just buy the S&P 500, and that sure reversed fast.
so what do you guys think this means for going forward, just through the end of the year?
I think going forward, staying diversified is what you should do, and just rebalance, stick with your plan. We talk about that all the time, sticking with the plan.
You never know when something is going to do well or when something's going to do bad. The timing of it is never exactly what we think. And I think when we talk about retirement and needing to draw money out of your portfolio, I think sometimes I've heard conversations where, why don't you just own the S&P 500? Why don't you just buy the S&P 500 index? Go out there and buy one of the ETFs and call it a day. And even if you say, I want to be in the S&P 500 and that's the portfolio I want, and you're drawing money out of your portfolio, just owning the S&P 500 ETF doesn't really get you there, because it doesn't let you sell what you want to sell at a specific time. Versus if you want to own the S&P 500 and that's really what you want to own, but you are drawing money out of your portfolio, at the very least you should have it, a value side of it, the blend of it, and the growth of it, so that when we do have these rotations that inevitably always happen over time, you can be selling out of the growth side when the growth has had a good run. And now you're getting the value side coming back. And now instead of having to sell the growth that's, turning negative over a short time period, you have a value side you can actually sell. Versus if you just own the S&P 500 as a whole and just the ETF, you can't cherry pick. You can't sell that.
Your hands are tied.
I think sometimes when we think about diversification, it's not even purely for, hey, let's own the entire market and specific areas of the market, large, small, growth, value. It's so that you can actually access the different areas of the market while you're managing your portfolio.
Right. Market cap weighted indexes are great, and S&P 500 performance has been great, but you look at what that is, 30% of it is 7 names, right? So you're losing that flexibility. Rebalancing for income flows like we do with our client portfolios, it systematically makes you, buy low and sell high, right? Or, if you're just selling, then just sell high and rebalance through outflows. I think that's very, very overlooked in long-term performance and smoothing out those market bumps. If you're pulling 4% and your portfolio drops 10%, well, now you're pulling 4.5%. You're not just pulling 4. So having areas where you can pull and smooth that ride out.
Yeah. I think along this rotation that we're seeing is partly, and this will lead into kind of the next thing we're talking about, is I think part of the reason we're seeing a rotation is because our economy is doing really well. And some of these companies that have been unloved are getting a little bit more love for the fact that they're doing good. We've seen a lot of good earnings reports out there, and I think GDP came out here within the last week, and for the quarter it was 2.8%.
Yep.
Expectations were 2.1.
Yep, 2.1.
So beat expectations by quite a wide margin. And I think what we're really seeing, though, because I think we're seeing a lot of variance within earnings of companies. None of these are recommendations, but I think you see, stocks like Polaris and Ford, and all of these 2020 stocks, these COVID stocks that saw a really huge boost to their sales and all-time records year over year for the last several years on sales. They're missing their mark. And I think missing their mark was inevitable, because you can't just have an all-time sales every single quarter over quarter over quarter over quarter for forever. You're going to have a slowdown.
jet skis are a lot more expensive when you have to finance them at 8-9% interest rate too.
They're way more expensive, and everyone has been back to a full busy schedule for the last several years, and they're realizing that as much as I want to be on the lake every weekend, as much as I want to use my boat, my kids have activities.
Yeah.
And we can't get out to the lake as much. And so I think people are being more intentional with their spending. I don't think we're having necessarily a slowdown. I think we're having more intentional on spending. And so that's a shift in habits.
When money is not free, you have to be more intentional about what you want to spend your money on.
Absolutely. And I think, you go out to eat, go out to, your local stores, and you're still seeing people out there. They're busy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on. People are just being a little bit more intentional with where they're spending the money, and that's causing some companies to have to, adjust. But at the same time, you're seeing, there are companies that are really taking advantage of it and doing really well during this time period too, that are getting the benefit of some of those adjustments.
Yeah.
Some of those are literally restaurants. I mean, Chipotle continues to do really well. McDonald's, I think their quarterly earnings was down a little bit, below expectations.
McDonald's maybe raised prices too fast.
Right. And now people are being intentional and being like, well, Chipotle is a much better meal potentially.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Chipotle. I think you are.
Yeah.
My son is.
I am. I used to be more. It's gone downhill a little bit.
It's
so location specific.
Yeah, it's Did you see there's a Wells Fargo analyst that came out with a report. And
what is it?
What a fun stock job to do. This guy had to go eat Chipotle for like 30 days and like weigh out each at different locations in New York and weigh out the inconsistencies.
Wasn't there like a 40% variance?
Yeah, it's crazy. It was a huge variance.
Yeah, I believe it.
God, that guy, imagine the weight he gained.
Or didn't.
Could be pretty healthy.
Yeah, right? Maybe he only...
This is his only meal of the day.
Yeah.
I know it's my son's like favorite restaurant right now. Like if we're out and he has the opportunity for us to get food, it's Chipotle every time.
Yeah. And back to the GDP report, one thing to mention is a lot of that was inventory build, which kind of speaks to people being intentional in their spending, right? Ford seeing a huge inventory build, all these stores, people starting to spend less on things and starting to spend more on experiences, which is a trend we've seen. And then, that kind of being offset with a big imports were a ton. So buying things from other countries to rebuild the inventories. And then probably part of the small cap rally this reversal in value in small cap is probably a soft landing being priced in. Small caps usually underperform large caps in late cycle. Everyone said we were late cycle. Well, now you're seeing, core PCE, which is like producer price inflation, and another way to measure inflation is coming down in line with expectations, like everyone says it should be. And the economy's still growing. So I think that explains some of the small cap value rotation as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Next topic. Another news that came out this week, a little more financial planning related. We finally got rules on the inherited IRA stretch. So back in 2020, now was it?
2020.
2020, the Secure Act 1.0 passed. And Secure Act 1.0 made a new rule on inherited IRAs that you have to get the money out in 10 years. And if you're a beneficiary and you inherit that $100,000, you have 10 years to get $100,000 out and pay the taxes on it. The big question was, do you have to take an amount every year? And the IRS came up with an answer to that.
We've known that answer was going to be yes for a while.
Yeah.
Just a very 4 years late. Yes.
We just didn't know how they wanted us to calculate it.
Yeah. And they've, no penalties for 2021, 2022, 2023, or 2024. Yep. So that's 4 years. If you haven't done anything in 4 years because you were waiting for this rule, well, you got
you have 6.
You have 6 years to get it all out.
Yeah.
So you probably still should have taken some. I know we've been recommending clients take some. But essentially with the new rule, it's called ALR, at least as rapidly. Us in the financial industry love our acronyms. And basically what that means is at least as fast as you would have had to take it under the old rules. So if you inherited an IRA from somebody who's greater than 10 years older than you and died after the RMD age, which would be 73 or 70 and a half, depending on when they passed, you have to take a annual distribution minimum of the calculation based on your life expectancy. And then at year 10, you have to take the rest of it. How are you guys handling these? Are you guys saying just take the minimum?
Depends.
I mean, it really does depend. I think you want to take them as evenly as possible to level out your tax hit on them. That being said, now you're looking at, is somebody retiring in the next within those 10 years? If they are, then a lot of times what you're doing is just the minimum, waiting until they're not retired, and then you can take out much larger chunks. Right. But it's definitely one where you don't want to just follow. There is no just hard and fast rule.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
You want to map out their income for those 10 years and see
I
what
agree.
it's going to look like.
That's how we're taking the approach. I've seen some people just say, hey, we're going to take 1/10, 1/9, 1/8, all the way down until they take the rest of it in year 10, which is probably better than just taking the minimum. But, cases come up. If you're going to retire in 5 years, take the minimum for 5 years and then don't draw out of your traditional IRAs or 401ks. Right. Take your distributions out of that account, the inherited one. Put a plan together, I think, is important.
It's really easy to not just go with the just take it evenly over the 10 years. Don't do that. It's really easy to calculate out your tax situation, even if it's not a really in-depth calculation, and it's just, I know I'm retiring in a handful of years, and I know I'm going to drop off X amount of income.
Well, and for people who are retired and are going to be in the same tax bracket that they are now, and in 10 years, maybe take some more out now.
Or vice versa. Maybe they are retired already. They're living on X amount of dollars,
right? But
they have an RMD coming up in 6 years. Well, now you're going to want to front load how quickly you distribute that, right?
Yeah. And what about if you're still working? One technique I've seen used is go ahead and take $10,000 out of your inherited IRA, but then increase your 401k contributions by that same $10,000. That way your distribution's tax neutral.
Yep.
Or Roth convert it, right? Pay the taxes, take $7,000 out, pay the taxes, and then make a Roth contribution, essentially getting that money out of the beneficiary's life table and into yours, getting rid of that 10-year rule. Yep. It's also increased the importance for IRA owners to consider Roth conversions. If you're married filing jointly, you have those bigger tax brackets, and you have 3 kids that are relatively high earners, maybe you should push your income up to 24% tax bracket. Even though it's painful for you, it's going to be more painful for your kids. Yeah. Obviously, make sure your retirement is set and planned for first. But if your survivability is 100% and your goals are legacy goals, charitable causes out of your IRA. If you're going to donate 20% of your net worth to charity, donate it out of your IRAs, not out of your non-qualified money. I had a case of an account that we took over from someone who deceased, and they had 50% of their money went to charity, but that 50% was in the non-qualified side, not on the qualified side, which that really sucks for the person inheriting the money. You inherit a $1.8 million IRA, and it's not fun to take those types of distributions.
You hit on something that I don't want to just gloss over. I think it's really important to understand. If all of a sudden your planning is not just, do I have enough for my own retirement, but we're legacy planning, aka my retirement's fully funded and I'm planning on passing on money to the next generation, you should be working with somebody that's doing generational planning for you.
Sure.
Because that tax situation, especially with the 10-year rule on IRAs, is all that much more important. Knowing what your kids' tax situation looks like, and being able to have conversations across the generations to understand how we're going to transfer this money most efficiently, because you can throw away a lot of money
Well, in his case, exactly. I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah, you can throw away a lot of money without planning right, and so I think you can't hit on that one enough. People who are like, I want to pay as little to taxes to Uncle Sam this year. It's a conversation and it's educating, but learning that paying taxes is good as long as we're doing it the most efficient way.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and a lot of times I would say, especially for people who are used to saving their whole life, it means paying more now
For sure.
than you otherwise would need to live.
Yeah.
And that's all legacy planning.
They are inevitable.
Yes.
So
Separating-
plan around it.
Right.
For someone who's been working their whole life and just going into retirement, one of the conversations that we always have to stress to them is there's a big difference between what your taxable income is, what your tax return says, and what your spending is, right? They say, when I tell a client, we're going to push your income up to $220,000 this year, they say, but I only spend $120,000. Well, I'm not talking about what your spending is. I'm talking about how much we're taking out of your qualified accounts, how we're doing your income planning.
Right.
Those are two different things. Another note on the generational planning, a case I had that's kind of interesting to consider on if you have large IRAs. If your kids are high earners and you have huge IRAs and your kids maybe already have a ton of qualified money already, maybe consider skipping your kids and leaving the IRAs to your grandchildren or a portion of them. And that can be used for a college fund. That can be used for some income for them when they're in their lower earning years. At the start of their life. Obviously, there's other considerations there. You don't want to leave a 21-year-old kid $300,000, but it kind of consider your goals.
Just
there
start
too.
the conversation.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right? That's the hardest part.
Yeah, I think families that start generational conversations and actually have conversations, the parents bring the kids in and start talking about, hey, here's what we've done, here's what we've grown. I think it's far better, and they're tough conversations. I think everyone growing up is taught to don't talk about money, don't talk about finances. They can find out when I'm dead. And I know within our practices, we've really tried to change that conversation and say, hey, let's bring in this next generation. Because the more money you're planning on passing along, the more we should be planning for it. And maybe that means we start gifting to the next generation, to the kids while we're still alive. We let them see the fruits of our labor that we're trying to pass on to them. And don't let it be a surprise. Let them plan. Let them figure that out so that we can help save and maximize on the tax situation.
Just passing those good habits down from an early age.
Yep.
I have an example where a client funded a donor advised fund and they added their kids on as authorized donors, so their kids can use that donor advised fund to make gifts and start caring about their charitable cause, because that's a value they wanted to pass down.
That's a
really
great
cool
way.
idea.
We've seen that a few times too. It's a really great way to bring the kids in and let them be involved. Have the important things front and center with them.
Right. And then
don't keep it on the background.
Also on these inherited IRAs and estate planning rules, remember, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is January 1st, 2026 is coming around faster and faster.
Yep.
So that estate exemption getting cut in half and those tax rates increasing, which we could do a whole segment on in a future episode. But unless that gets extended or changed completely, we're staring down the barrel of that tax increase.
Yep.
For 17 months.
For people in for the people on top of a 12% bracket, that's about a 10% tax increase. That's a lot of money. The brackets are going to go up. If you're in a 22% bracket, you're going to be in a 28% bracket come 2026. So, maybe pay more taxes now.
It makes sense to use up the 24% bracket now,
Yeah.
rather than arguably you've got
For sure,
12,
22.
22, 24, and if you're already in the 22, you might as well be using up the 24 at this point.
Yeah, it's not that much more.
It's
marginal.
2% more,
Yeah.
and the 22's going to 25, and the 24's going to 28,
Yeah.
assuming no changes.
Yeah, and there's IRMA, right? Your Medicare
Right.
premiums will go up,
Yeah,
but
we gotta watch
you
that.
have to remind clients that's only like $5,000 a year. Right. That's when you're talking about numbers that big. That's like another 1.5%, 2% increase on your income. It's really not that big of a deal.
And the Medicare
But-
brackets don't line up perfectly
They
with the
don't,
tax
no.
brackets.
They
So
don't.
a lot of times you're able to go pretty high into the
Yeah.
tax bracket before you're actually going to the next.
Can get a little bit of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
There. Double dip.
For sure. But it does make the tax calculation a little bit more convoluted, especially because Medicare's is off of your gross.
2 years ago, yeah.
Yep.
And,
from 2 years ago.
Biggest thing is, if your advisor's not managing expectations and telling you this on the front end, that's kind of how I always say to handle it is we just got to manage the expectations. It's not that big of a deal, but if you don't see it coming and your Medicare premiums are $300 a month higher, that's when people get upset.
Yeah, nobody's excited
Yeah, it's
when they don't know it's coming.
right.
Then there's that shock and like almost feeling like it wasn't planned, right?
Right.
Like nobody wants that. It's no different than if you do take out more money than expected. If you're not going to do enough withholding in that year because you don't need to, make sure they know that they're going to have a tax bill. The last thing you
Right.
want is nobody wants I owe $15,000.
Yeah, it's an ugly
Nobody
surprise.
wants that. Nobody wants that. So just set expectations. Make sure you know all the different things that are going to be impacted by looking at that.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
another thing that was really interesting, CrowdStrike, that global outage.
Pushed an update without testing it enough, I guess. Caused
Oops.
a manual reboot on all Microsoft systems. We were affected by it. LPL was affected by it. Kind of shut us down for 4 hours there. Luckily, it wasn't too bad.
Didn't have access to systems, but had access to our team. If we needed to do
Right.
trading or anything, we
Trade
were
desk.
everything was still up on that side. So redundancies were there. I was kind of shocked in a way. Like it's kind of crazy to think about how vulnerable like the whole world can be by one simple update. What was it, like every airline except for Southwest?
Because Southwest is and probably Spirit too is running on the old system.
Southwest is a funny one too because they only fly Boeing 747s. So the airline's been underperforming until now, right? It's just like haha, all our planes are broken, but at least our systems are archaic, right? Our systems are older than our planes.
Southwest was in the news this week too again for they're stopping their open boarding policy. So you're going to get assigned ticketing.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll help their profits though.
Pay
People
for
pay
seats.
for seats. Yeah.
That's what all the other airlines do.
Exactly.
But man,
Do you like to board an airplane first or last?
I don't really care. It depends. It depends on how full the flight is because
Yeah.
I usually don't check a bag.
I always
put the
have
bag
the
up.
roller. So
Yeah, and man, there's nothing worse than getting gate checked at a airport you've never been to, and
I agree on that front. If I'm hearing that the baggage is going to get filled up, like
Get me on that
100%
plane.
get me on
Yeah.
that plane. Otherwise, I still don't understand why everyone flocks to the gate the moment they
Right.
say it's time to board.
I like to get on early. I got to come clean here.
Depends.
I am a very good sleeper on planes, so I'll get on
Are you out before the plane even moves?
sometimes.
I'm the same way. If I have a morning flight and a window seat, like I'm like, all right, get me on. But if I got an aisle seat, I'm gonna get on first, and then have to get up twice when people come on the inside of me. It's like
True.
But man,
Neither one of you guys have kids yet either.
Oh, true.
Let me tell you, there's nothing worse than getting on a plane right away with kids just to have them be like, when is the plane going to take off?
I have to go to the bathroom.
It's going to be an hour yet, guys. Settle down. We're the first ones on.
That's fair.
We haven't even gotten 20 people else on. Like, it's
relax. Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
The screens help now, though. Just turn on a movie, guys. It's all right.
Relax. Right.
Do not forget headphones.
The airports are still a little bit of a mess.
So I got stuck in Chicago. I was supposed to fly home Tuesday morning at a 6 a.m. flight. So, got up early, 3:45, getting ready, took the Uber to O'Hare, and then flight canceled. Rebooked on an 8:30 p.m. flight out of O'Hare. That didn't end up leaving until like 11 p.m.
oh my gosh.
Landed in Minneapolis after that flight. It looked like a third world country. Everybody's like, there's garbage bags out like outside each bathroom. Like imagine like you see the streets of like New York, how they just throw their garbage on the street. That's what the airport walkways looked like. You had people sleeping all over the place on couches, and so I wasn't affected all that bad. I was able to leave the airport and come back to the airport for my flight, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But man, you hear stories about people being stuck in Atlanta for like 2-3 days. Like, oh my goodness. With kids, I heard stories about parents and kids getting separated on rebooked flights, and not good.
Yeah, Delta's in the new.
It's Delta.
It was Delta mostly. Yeah,
Delta.
they rebooked or they oversold my flight home yesterday. Delta.
Yeah, it's still a little messed up.
You were on vacation again, weren't you?
Yeah, you had to get that one in there.
Had to.
It was a quick trip. Thank you very much, and I did enjoy it. If you were wondering,
Where'd you go?
New Hampshire. Yeah. We go every year. Me and a group of my buddies, who do watch this. So.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Feel free to leave comments on most embarrassing stories of Mike.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a future guest.
I don't think so.
Did you guys play bags?
Of course.
Did you lose?
Nope. I'm the best bags player in this circle, right? Semicircle. It's not close.
He's not that good because I'm not that good, and I almost beat him.
Almost. I play down to my competition, make you think you got a chance, keep you coming back. If I beat you 21 rip every time, we stop playing. Anyways.
All right, Mike.
Well, thanks for listening. That's what we got for you guys this week. We'll see you next week, episode 10.